Hey, welcome to another episode of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is Marvel Legends, and specifically X-Men Marvel Legends. So I'll preface this by saying I'm not a huge X-Men fan. I'm a huge Marvel fan. I grew up reading a huge chunk of the Marvel Universe. I have an older brother who's 2 years older than me, and we got into collecting comics in 1986 when I was like 8 years old. And I started buying Spider-Man, and he started buying X-Men. That was where we started. But then we quickly started buying, I would buy Silver Surfer, and he would buy Captain America, and he would buy Iron Man, and then I was buying some of the new characters like Darkhawk and Sleepwalker and the Guardians of the Galaxy. And so between the two of us, we collected a good chunk of the Marvel Universe. And, you know, we read all the official handbooks of characters that Marvel would publish, so we knew a lot of the side characters. So when my brother was buying X-Men on the regular, in 1986, and for a few years after that, I was pretty well versed in the X-Men because I read all of his books. And there weren't nearly as many X-Men books back then as there are today, so it was much easier to keep track of everything. So, my X-Men fandom exists for a pretty short amount of time, from about 86 into the early 90s. I'm not really sure where it fizzled out, but even though I could have still read my brother's X-Men comic books, I think I stopped reading them somewhere in the 90s, and I've really lost track of the X-Men since then. I know all kinds of crazy stuff has happened, and I'm just not very up to date. Every now and again, they guest appear in one of the books that I am reading, and I don't know what's happening. I'm like, oh, this character's back from the dead, or this character's changed in some crazy way, and yeah, so I'm not a huge X-Men guy. So if I get some of my X-Men facts wrong, please don't jump down my throat about it. I know X-Men has a huge following and some really loyal fans. I just happen to not be one of them. I'm a casual X-Men fan at best. So, before I get into talking about the figures, I also just want to say, so I started in 86, and that same year, now I might be biased because everybody probably likes the period they started collecting comic books the best, but I really think we were in a great run of X-Men comics at the time. Chris Claremont was writing the book, and, he is very, widely regarded as the best X-Men writer of all time. He was doing things like there was new characters being introduced. Within the first month or two of us collecting comic books, it was the Mutant Massacre storyline. And out of that, that kind of introduced Sabretooth as Wolverine's arch enemy. It introduced new villains like the Marauders, and then Mr. Sinister. The teams were changing. X-Factor was pretty new at that time, and then that spun off into Excalibur. There was a lot of really cool stuff happening. And so a lot of these figures that I'm going to talk about today, which just came out, primarily I'm going to talk about the newest wave of Marvel Legends that just came out, which was the Build-A-Figure Wendigo wave. So I have all those figures to talk about, plus a few other odds and ends that I've picked up recently. But yeah, they mostly harken back to a time when I really was an X-Men fan. So I'm pretty excited about a lot of these figures. So, without further ado, let me show you all the new figures that I've got in the last week or so. So the first figure I want to take a look at from the Wendigo wave of X-Men Marvel Legends really requires no introduction. You should recognize this guy. This is Wolverine. Now, he was, first introduced in the Incredible Hulk comic books, issue 181, way back in the day. And he's been a staple of Marvel Comics ever since. He's obviously the most popular X-Men going out there. Hugh Jackman has played him a million times. And this is the figure from the wave that I probably wouldn't have bought if I didn't have to. And it's not a knock on this figure at all. But this is Wolverine in his X-Force outfit. And it's not one of his main outfits. Wolverine, typically wears his like yellow and blue outfit, or his kind of like mustard and brown outfit. So here's the Wolverine figure that I've had for a few years now, and that I would consider to be like the core Wolverine in my collection, and really the only Wolverine anybody really needs. It's a great looking figure. This is my preferred Wolverine costume because this is the one he was wearing when we started reading comic books. So it's the one I have a fondness for. And yet, it's just a great figure. And I try to avoid buying multiple versions of characters when I can. So after this figure had come out, they released what I assumed was the exact same figure, except repainted in his yellow and blue outfit. Now, it was probably actually a little different, because that Wolverine, I think, has shoulder pads and stuff, so there probably was some additional pieces, but I assume it was largely the exact same figure repainted. And even though it was a nice looking figure, I didn't need to buy it because the only Build-A-Figure piece it came with was a couple of hoses to put on Apocalypse. And my Apocalypse looks just fine without the additional hoses. So I was glad to save myself 30 bucks. And I kind of felt the same way about this Wolverine. When I saw this was coming out, I was like, you know what? If this guy didn't come with a crucial piece of Wendigo, I would skip it. Because I really don't need Wolverine in his black and gray. And again, I thought it was just going to be a straight repaint of this Wolverine. But, and you might not be able to tell because it's not super obvious, but he is actually very different. And we start right down with the boots. So this guy's got his like typical Wolverine like flared boot, where this X-Force one has more of like a combat boot. The legs, I think, are the same. But you see the belt there is quite different. Torso is probably the same. Now the arms, I think, are the same as well, but see the gloves? This is a key difference here too. So this Wolverine, he's got the little things on his knuckles where the skinny little claws pop out, whereas this Wolverine doesn't have the things on his knuckles, and he's got the thicker claws with the curve on them, which was how a lot of artists draw him. But yeah, it's different from these claws that you're seeing here. And then I thought the heads were maybe the same, but they're not either. You can see this one's got some sculpted lines there on the top, and also on the, kind of hard to see, but on the fin here, you can see on the bottom half how that kind of has a bit of a little curve to it, where this one is pretty flush. So yeah. And so even though the expressions are similar, the heads are different. So with that many sculpted differences, you know, I was pretty happy that I wasn't buying just a repaint. But truth be told, once I got this figure, I almost wouldn't have minded if it was a repaint because this is a fantastic figure, and this really is a cool paint job. This is what he wears when he's fighting with X-Force, which was kind of the, at the time when he was part of X-Force, it was when they were operating as kind of like a black ops team, pulling off missions in secret. That X-Force version of X-Force launched in 2008, which was actually one of the rare times I actually bought an X-Men book for a while, partly because it had a pretty cool team made up of Wolverine and X-23, Warpath, Archangel, and Wolfsbane. And it was drawn by Clayton Crane, who's like a pretty cool artist. So yeah, I enjoyed that book for a time. Another reason I kind of like this outfit is, so while I don't have the Marvel Legends 6-inch yellow Wolverine, I did actually recently acquire this version of Wolverine, which is his first appearance Wolverine. So this is what he looked like back in Hulk 181. And so that's a pretty cool figure to have. But before I get into Marvel Legends, I was collecting the 3 3/4 inch Marvel Universe figures. And the Wolverine I had from that collection was the yellow and blue, basically this version of Wolverine in this outfit. So kind of a cross between the two on the end there. And you can see it's an okay figure. But the next Wolverine I got from this collection was the X-Force Wolverine. And comparatively, this Wolverine just has a ton more detail. He's way cooler looking. And so when I collected these figures, I liked this X-Force version so much more than this one that it really kind of made me a fan of this costume. So even though I kind of would have been happy to save myself 30 bucks and not have to buy another version of Wolverine, I don't really mind at all that I felt I had to get this, because now I'm really happy I have it in my collection. And so we'll just take another quick look at him there. As far as articulation goes, he's got everything you'd expect. Marvel Legend, he's got the double jointed elbows, double jointed knees, so you can get some good range of motion in there in the legs. The ab crunch, swivel at the waist, kind of swivel at the thigh, ankles, rocker joints. He's got everything. And he's still got that, I like how he's short, the way Wolverine is supposed to be. You might not know that from watching the Hugh Jackman movies, but Wolverine was always intended to be a really small guy. And I like that these Marvel Legends figures represent that, because he's much smaller than the other figures. So overall, I'd say this is a big win. I really like this X-Force Wolverine, so I recommend you pick him up. So the next figure I'm going to talk about from the Wendigo wave is Cannonball. Now Cannonball, he's a member of X-Force as well. I primarily think of him as a member of the New Mutants. So again, going back to when I first started collecting comic books, my brother Doug was collecting X-Men, and he was collecting X-Factor, which featured the original team of 5 X-Men, and shortly thereafterwards he was collecting Excalibur. Well, New Mutants was the team of teenage X-Men in training, and that was the one X-book that I collected. And Cannonball was kind of the team leader there. So I've been reading Cannonball since my very earliest days reading comic books. And I wouldn't say he's a favorite character of mine, but yeah, I just have a long history with him, and I always liked him. So I'm happy to get this new figure of him. Now, when he was in the New Mutants, usually they just wore a pretty standard X-Men trainee outfit, which is the black outfit with the yellow X across the top. This was probably the first unique costume for Cannonball that stuck. There seemed to be multiple times when they tried to put them in unique costumes, but they always just seemed to go back to the black and yellow. None of the costumes really stuck until Rob Liefeld came on as the artist of the book, and he put Cannonball in this outfit in 1990. And yeah, he's worn, I think, some variation of this basically ever since, with kind of the flight goggles on his forehead that he doesn't really seem to need on his eyes, but he wears them anyway, and then the purple jacket. Now, Cannonball's powers are that he basically can fly through the air like a rocket ship, or, I don't know, a cannon. And this, you'll notice his lower half is this translucent plastic, which is yellow and then kind of transitions into orange. And it makes for a pretty cool flame effect and does a pretty good job of capturing what Cannonball's powers look like when certain artists draw them into the comic book. So you see him blasting through the air like this, and yeah, it looks pretty good. The thing that's crazy, though, is that they didn't give him any real legs to swap out, because Cannonball definitely has legs when he's not flying around, and I know I would prefer to display him on my shelf with his legs. And yeah, the fact that this is the only option, so even if I were to play with my toys, which I don't play with my toys, but if I did and I was to have him just hanging out at X Mansion and having a conversation with somebody, he has to look like this all the time. It's pretty ridiculous. And I think Hasbro's been really knocking it out of the park with these Marvel Legends figures for the last several years, and this is one of the biggest misses in a long time. In that, from the waist up, it's a great figure, but yeah, from the waist down, pretty stupid. And I'd be fine with it. I would actually think this was awesome if this was an option. If he only came with the legs, I probably wouldn't miss this, but if this was an added accessory, I think, wow, they really went above and beyond. But yeah, to not give him legs, it's crazy. So, yeah, that's Cannonball. If you're not trying to build Wendigo, I'd say you could pass on this figure. So next up, also from the Wendigo wave, is Mr. Sinister. So this is one of the X-Men's like big bad villains. I think one of the reasons why I never really latched on as a big fan of the X-Men is because of their villains. They have so many great X-Men, but it's very hard for them to find villains that match up. Like I like Spider-Man and Batman, you know, they've got these great rogues galleries. But for a long time, the X-Men had Magneto. But around the time that me and my brother were reading X-Men comics, that's when they introduced Apocalypse, who is now one of their main villains. Mr. Sinister here was introduced spinning out of the Mutant Massacre, and he's become one of their like main and most powerful villains, as well as the Marauders and the Reavers. There was just a lot of characters that have become X-Men's core villains that were introduced right around the time we started reading, which is not the case with a lot of other characters like Spider-Man. All of his core villains were really already established. I remember when Venom was introduced, but other than that, guys like Green Goblin, Vulture, Dr. Octopus, Sandman, those guys were all created, before I was even born. So it was kind of cool to be there at the start of all these core X-Men villains. So Mr. Sinister, he's a pretty crazy looking dude. So yeah, he was introduced in 1987, the year after we started reading the X-Men books. And I couldn't even tell you exactly what his deal is. I kind of have forgotten about it. I just know he was super powerful. He was the leader of the Marauders. And yeah, as far as his powers go, I think it's some sort of telekinesis and mind control, and obviously super powerful. And yeah, this is a pretty cool figure. Like, the head sculpt is great. He looks like kind of a crazed Joker. He's really big and bulky, which is how he was always presented. And yeah, this is the classic outfit that I remember him wearing. Those kind of banded outfit. The crazy like thigh-high boots. And then this tassel-y Macho Man style cape, which is really his signature piece. And this is presented in kind of a soft, rubbery plastic. There's 2 tiers to it, and it is all shredded there, so it hangs really cool. Yeah, he looks pretty great. And this is my first ever Mr. Sinister figure in this scale. Again, I told you I collected the 3 3/4 inch ones, so I do have the small Mr. Sinister. His cape is somewhere, but yeah, this was a pretty cool figure, and I think this one improves on it in pretty much every way. But you can see how close they were to the classic costume. They didn't stray from it at all. But yeah, he's got that really nice head sculpt. And I think this is a really great figure of a pretty wacky character. So yeah, if you're a Mr. Sinister fan, then this is a huge win. So pick this guy up. And next up we have Nightcrawler. Now this is a figure that people have been waiting a long time for a good update of him, because he's a fan favorite X-Men character. Even if you're a casual X-Men fan, you probably recognize him from the movies. He was portrayed by Alan Cumming in the original trilogy. And then I don't even know the young actor that got to play him in the later movies. But yeah, he's pretty recognizable. This blue elf with the devil tail and the pointy ears. And yeah, he is a great character. I loved this guy from the get-go when I was first introduced to him in the early days. And yeah, even though he was an X-Men for a while, it was during that same mutant massacre where he went into a coma and he was kind of taken off of the playing field for a little while some new members joined the X-Men team. And yeah, when he came to and was revived, he joined Excalibur. And that was a really fun book, which had a different flavor from the X-Men books. And yeah, if you've never read the original run of Excalibur, I highly recommend it. And I think Nightcrawler really had a chance to shine there. So yeah, Nightcrawler is he's a German teleporter. He's the son of Mystique and Azazel. So 2 X-Men villains. And yeah, he's just got a great look. And this is his classic look. I think he's gone through some changes over the years, and I'm really happy that we got just this classic 80s looking Nightcrawler. And again, he's got all that great posability, all the double jointed knees, and the chest crunch there, swivels. So yeah, very posable. Got the tail there. It's not, like, it's bent, it's soft, so you can pose it, but it's not like wired or anything, so it pretty much just goes back to its original position. So you see for accessories, he had 1 or 2, I think, interchangeable hands. So he has a hand that has like a closed fist that would better hold this sword accessory, because Nightcrawler was a bit of a swashbuckler, so having a sword makes sense. And the other cool thing is he has a couple alternate heads. So where he was always kind of a good-spirited character, we get this smiling head. And this might be my default display option. I haven't decided yet which one I'm going to keep, but I like both of them a lot. And another one that's kind of cool is this kind of angry head. And you can see there, his forehead's all blackened out, which might be kind of weird because it doesn't match the other heads. But since this is just kind of an extra throwaway, I like that they took a chance on this one, because artists often portrayed Nightcrawler where he looked like this in the comic book, where the whole top of his head looked black and you saw these glowing yellow eyes kind of in the shadows. So I like that they tried to capture that here with this look. But I probably would have just preferred this to be solid blue, honestly. But still, it's pretty cool. And it's nice to have the options. So yeah, if you had the old Nightcrawler figure, I would say absolutely upgrade to this one. Because yeah, it's just great. Love it. So next up, we have Guardian. Now you might question why this guy's included in the X-Men wave, because he is not a member of the X-Men or any of the X-Men teams. But he was first introduced in the X-Men comic book in 1978. And he is the leader of the Canadian super team Alpha Flight. Now, I myself am Canadian, so you might think that this guy is one of my favorite characters. But he's not. He's not like anywhere near as iconic to us as, say, Captain America might be to Americans. You know, I appreciated that Marvel gave us a Canadian super team, but honestly, I never really read the Alpha Flight book. And even though Guardian was cool looking, and I probably would have read a book just about him, the rest of the team was kind of goofy. I didn't care for them, so I never really got into Alpha Flight. And this guy here, I think around the time I got into collecting comic books, he was dead for a long while, and his wife took on the role of Guardian. So, yeah. This guy here, again, I also couldn't even tell you what his powers are. I think he's just kind of got the default super strength, super speed. I couldn't even tell you if he flies or not. I don't know. Like, it's a cool costume. I love the simpleness of it. It looks like the Canadian flag. This is a good figure of him. It's pretty simple. It's a little hard to get excited about him compared to some of the other figures in the wave, which have a lot more going on. The best thing about this guy is probably the head sculpt. He's got a very cranky looking face, and I think if you put a couple of ears on him, he would make a great Batman. And yeah, it's a cool figure. The only other Guardian I had was from the 3 3/4 inch line. And here he is. It's very similar, except he's got a more metallic red. I couldn't really tell you which one I like better. I think they both look pretty good. The fact that this guy has that kind of shading in the white to kind of define his muscles is kind of like a wash over there. I think that looks pretty good, and it might have served this figure so he just didn't look so plain if they had some color in the white parts of his costume. But overall, he's not bad. So if you don't have any version of this guy, I'd say go ahead and pick him up. There's really nothing wrong with him. And yeah, you need him to complete your Wendigo. So there's Guardian. Next up, we have Boom Boom. And this is actually my favorite figure from the wave. This is the one I was most excited about. Now, if I look at the figure objectively, it is definitely not the best figure in the wave. The body is pretty skinny. I'm sure it's a reuse from other female figures we've had before. And it's pretty dull. It's just a solid pink. And it's not even like it's a bright pink. But yeah, she doesn't have any sort of logo, not even like an X-Men circle on her arm or anything like that. You could take her vest and her belt off, and yeah, it's just a solid pink figure. It's kind of bland. And then even her accessories, so like the gloves here, the cuffs kind of slide up to give the look of her having the cuffed gloves. Same with the boots. They've added these pieces, so it's a standard shoe, but they've kind of put this on there to give the look of her little slouchy boots that she wore. And then they've added, a strap here, and she's got her little mini vest as well. So, and then the head, I don't know what's going on with these sunglasses. These look like something, your grandmother might wear over top of her other glasses to help protect her from the sun. And she's got her little star earrings. Like, she's kind of a goofy looking character. But the thing is, Boom Boom first showed up when I was first collecting comic books. Originally it was in the Secret Wars 2 in 1985, so just before I started collecting. But then she was introduced into X Factor and the New Mutants. She was in a couple of miniseries called The Fallen Angels and The Exterminators. And when she was first introduced, she was a little more punk rock. She had kind of these crazy little t-shirt with suspenders on over top, and her hair was much wilder and kind of cat eye sunglasses, and I just really loved Boom Boom. She was a really fun character. And this outfit is kind of based on when Rob Liefeld took over the New Mutants and gave them all their new costumes, such as Cannonball's purple jacket with the goggles. And this is kind of how he redesigned Boom Boom. Now at the time, so that's when she got a haircut. She got these big goofy green glasses. Now originally she wore a pink outfit that was like a mini skirt. I'm not sure when exactly she switched over to the full bodysuit. But yeah, I'm not sure if there's ever been a Boom Boom figure before. I know I've never had one. So not from back in the Toy Biz days when I had a ton of figures from Toy Biz in the 5-inch scale, and they never made Boom Boom in the 3 3/4-inch scale. So even though I would much prefer if this was like an early Boom Boom, when she had the suspenders and the longer hair, I'm just happy to get this character. So if they redo her down the road in her original look, I will retire this one, put her in the back of the shelf. But for now, I'm just happy to get her. And so Boom Boom, she's got powers that she creates little time bombs, so little floating circles that she launches at bad guys. And for accessories, she's got an alternate hand here, which is kind of flaming. It's got this bomb effect kind of attached to it. So you can plug that in there. Now I don't really like it for just display purposes. It seems like the fire effect is coming off at a weird angle. Like I feel it should be going up more or something. And then she also does have just a loose fire effect that I guess she can hold in her other hand. So yeah, it's neat that they included it, but I didn't really need that. And the other accessory, also which I didn't really need because I will display her with this head, but it's pretty cool, is an alternate head. Let me just pop it off here. And there you go. You got her head with the bubble gum, which she was often seen chewing in the comic books. So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. It's kind of a translucent plastic. It's stuck right to her. Yeah, I like it. Pretty cool. So that's Boom Boom. Oddly enough, this is the highlight from the wave for me. And yeah, if you're a Boom Boom fan, go pick this one up. So next up, we've got the Build-A-Figure. So this is the Wendigo. If you bought all 6 of those other figures, you would have got his 2 arms, his 2 legs, his torso, and his head, and you could build this final product. So you can see he's pretty big. And just for comparison purposes here, let me grab a couple other figures. So you can see here, if I put Wolverine, who's a shorter figure, next to him, Wendigo just towers over him. And then even if I bring in Mr. Sinister, who's a larger than normal figure, even he is a fair bit smaller than Wendigo. Which is nice, because I like the Build-A-Figures to be big figures that it would be hard to justify getting for 30 bucks. So you really feel you're getting some bang for your buck when you build this guy. So yeah, I think this figure is great. I think he's got quite a few reused parts from Sasquatch, which is one of the other members of Guardians Alpha Flight. So Sasquatch came out last year, I believe. And so I think he's got the same torso and the same legs. Now they have added some new pieces, such as the tail. Sasquatch doesn't have a tail. This whole shoulder bit here I think is all new. And the head is completely different, which is nice because I think a lot of Wendigo figures in the past have always been repaints of Sasquatch. But this head is very unique and doesn't look anything like Sasquatch. And yeah, it might not be the head that a lot of Wendigo fans would like, because Wendigo does have kind of a more classic look from his days, fighting the Hulk. And but this look here, I really like it because it comes from the Red Hulk storyline that was drawn by Art Adams. And Art Adams is one of my favorite artists from early in my comic collecting career. I mean, my brother used to have a big poster of the X-Men that was drawn by Art Adams up on our bedroom wall. And yeah, so in a particular story that Jeff Loeb wrote and Art Adams drew, it was very early on in the introduction of the Red Hulk character. This whole pack of Wendigos attacked the city, and they weren't the Wendigo that we were used to seeing. Some of them had longer hair, and they looked a little more human. Here's a little shot from the comic book there. So this is the look that they were going for with this figure. Now, the only other Wendigo figure that I have to compare to is the old Toy Biz one from like the 90s. And you see him here? So he basically looks like a white gorilla. And he had these real bits of hair to give him this fuzzy look. And this was a fun figure for back in the day. But I definitely think this new one is substantially cooler. Now, one gripe I do have about this Wendigo, and I don't know if it's just mine or everybody has that issue, but you'll notice here, his neck, I can't really get that joint to go in the hole and for it to lock into place, so it just kind of seems to rest there, and so there's this gap on his neck at all times. So I'm not sure what the deal is there. Like, he looks fine for display, you don't really see it there, but I don't know if that's going to be a problem for everybody. But yeah, he looks pretty cool. And before I get him out of here, let's just maybe quickly compare him to Sasquatch. Okay, so here is Sasquatch. And so yeah, you can see these guys look pretty great together. They've definitely got some shared pieces, but also some differences. So the hands, this guy's got more clawed hands. The kind of furry crotch piece here is longer here than it is here. And while this guy does have kind of a shoulder add-on too, it's much smaller than Wendigo's big hairy back piece there. And yeah, these guys would be, that looks like a fun fight to have. So if you've got a Sasquatch, you need somebody for him to duke it out with, you got to get all these figures so you can build yourself a Wendigo. Highly recommended. So the next figure I have to show you is another X-Men Marvel Legends, but she's actually from the prior X-Men wave that came out maybe 2 months ago or so. And the Build-A-Figure was Caliban. Now, I didn't intend to get that whole wave. I think I only got 2 figures previously, and I was probably going to stop there, so I was a ways away from completing Caliban. But Jubilee was one of the ones I was kind of on the fence about, and she seems to be getting harder to get. I've seen her on the secondary market selling for more than the other figures on there. So when I spotted her the other day, I thought I better grab her, because she's, even though she's never been a favorite character of mine, she is one of the main X-Men, and yeah, just in case I do decide to eventually build Caliban, I don't want to miss out on the torso piece that came with Jubilee, because obviously you'll need that to put everything else together. So Jubilee here, she is like a teen that was introduced in 1989. So again, around the time that I was still pretty into the X-Men, and her powers are a lot of these people have similar powers. She's got energy blast that she shoots from her fingers. It's not too far off from Boom Boom. And yeah, so this is a pretty good Jubilee figure. They did do one previously. They actually did a Jubilee as a Build-A-Figure a while back before I had gotten into Marvel Legends, which seems kind of silly to, you know, you buy 6 figures and you only get to put together this little teenager. But yeah, so it works much better as a singly carded figure. And much like Boom Boom, I like this figure. It captures her classic look, but to look at her objectively, it's a pretty like lame superhero costume. She's got like rubber boots and then little jean shorts and a raincoat, and like I don't know what is going on there. But it is her classic look. It is what it is. And yeah, it's a pretty good figure of Jubilee. And for accessories, she came with an alternate head, and she also has a bubblegum blowing head. And this one, which I like, I wish the other Boom Boom had it, is that this one doesn't have glasses on. So at least it makes it a little more unique from that one. But it came with removable glasses, so if you want the bubblegum head, you can still put the glasses on her. So yeah, there you go. So that's Jubilee. Now I just want to quickly bring up my Kree Sentry Build-A-Figure here. If you watched my prior video where I told you how I got some of the Captain Marvel figures, and that was another wave I did not plan on completing. I was only going to buy 1 or 2, so I ended up with just this Sentry's head and I think a leg. But then my local Walmart had all the Captain Marvel figures marked down, so I picked up 3 other ones I needed. And now I've got, I had a pretty complete Sentry, but I was still missing his arms. So I have these spare Ultron arms kicking around, and I was able to create, even though they don't fit in there, you can see they're just kind of resting in place. But they kind of look like they belong there. Sure, they're kind of scrawny, and if you saw them compared to the arms he's supposed to have, they're way smaller and out of place. But at a glance, at least I can put him on my shelf, and he's not armless. So it is nice with these Build-A-Figures when you can kind of put something together. And so now that I got Jubilee, I thought I would try to throw together a Caliban, and he's not quite as successful. But here is my temporary Caliban figure. So I've got the head, the torso, and the arm, which works great. I don't have either of his legs, but I've got him wearing these Juggernaut legs, which I had left over, which fit him pretty oddly, but it kind of works, especially if I put him on the back of the shelf behind everybody else. But I really need another arm for him. So for now, he's just got Sauron's arm, which obviously doesn't look right. I had a few other options, but this is the only one I found that fit into the slot and actually stayed there. So for now, that's my Caliban. And yeah, Caliban, I don't really like all the figures in the wave, so I really don't want to buy them to complete them, but Caliban himself is a very cool character. He was a scrawny little guy that was introduced in the X-Men comic books in 1981, and he used to just be a little scrawny dude. And if you've seen the X-Men movies, he was played by two different guys in X-Men Apocalypse and then in Logan. Steve Merchant played him in Logan, which I thought was a really nice portrayal. But I never really cared for that scrawny version of Caliban. It wasn't until Apocalypse turned him into one of his horsemen that he became all big and bulky and scary looking like this. And now he's a really cool character. So I might at the very least have to buy another figure to get that arm going. And then, yeah, I might just keep him on the Juggernaut legs. So anyway, there's my Caliban in progress. So here's another X-Men Marvel Legends. Now this figure here wasn't part of either of the two X-Men waves that I was just showing you. This one here was just a single carded figure. I think she was actually exclusive to Walgreens maybe. But here in Canada I was able to pick her up through EB Games, which is like our GameStop. And I wasn't planning on buying this figure, partly because, as I told you, my X-Men knowledge pretty much covers 86 to maybe 92 or something. And Emma Frost always wore a white outfit because her superhero name, if you will, is the White Queen. And she always wore like a white corset, thigh-high white boots, and a white cape. And when I saw this figure advertised, it had an all-black outfit, and it had this head with kind of like blue lipstick and this long flowing hair. And even though like that in itself is a fine figure, it's just not the Emma Frost I know. It doesn't look like anything I recognize. So I think this is like her most contemporary look. From what I saw on Wikipedia, she's currently calling herself the Black King. So I guess that's what this outfit is all about. But it wasn't until I saw the figure and it had this alternate head with this kind of, I don't know what you call this hairstyle exactly. I'll just call it a bob. But this is the look that Emma Frost always had in the 80s, and that I think for probably most of her existence. And when I saw that head, I thought it was a great head. Like, it's beautifully sculpted, beautifully painted, looks great. And, you know, I was like, all right, I'll buy it. I would prefer if she had the white costume, but this costume, even though it's black, it's close enough in look and style to the classic costume that I know. And yeah, I actually think it's a great looking figure. So yeah, I'm glad I picked this one up, and I really appreciate Hasbro giving us this alternate head, because maybe there's some newer fans that will display her this way, but I will definitely be displaying her with this head here. So this is another classic character. She's been in the X-Men comic book since 1980. I was most familiar with her probably from the New Mutants comic book, because she was one of the key members of the Hellfire Club, and she had her own team of kind of evil mutant teenagers called the Hellions, and the Hellions and the New Mutants often crossed paths. But yeah, she was a character I always kind of liked, even though she didn't seem like she had a whole lot of development or backstory back in the day, and I think they've done a lot more with her over recent years when she's become a good guy and joined the X-Men and started dating Cyclops and all that stuff that I'm not privy to. But yeah, this here is a great figure of Emma Frost. So the next figure I want to show you is another X-Men, another Marvel Legend, but again, not from either of the two Build-A-Figure waves. They also recently put out a line of what they're calling X-Men Classics, and these characters come in on card backs that look like the 90s X-Men toys that were produced by Toy Biz. So this kind of retro throwback. And these figures are more based on the characters' looks from the animated series. So this here is Dazzler. And she might not be a super well-known X-Men, but she is actually my favorite member of the X-Men. So this character was introduced in 1980, and she was originally a disco-themed character. She had her own comic book that ran for 42 issues for the first couple of years of the 80s, but it seemed like she was created just a little too late. Disco was pretty much already dead by that point, and I wasn't aware of her when I started collecting comic books. I had never heard of her, but the year after I got into comic books in 1987, Dazzler was reintroduced with a whole new look, this look you see here, and she joined the X-Men. And again, sort of like Boom Boom. She might even have the exact same body as Boom Boom, because it's just a simple, very plain, no sculpted detail on the body. She's got the loose jacket, the loose belt, and now that I look at it, it might even be the exact same jacket and belt as Boom Boom. But that's what the costume looked like, so it's hard to complain. Anyway, she's got the star painted on there, star painted on the leg, the red band there. Kind of a weird costume, but that's what she looked like. And I loved this costume when she first was introduced into the X-Men. And I didn't know if I'd ever get a Dazzler figure because she's not a very mainstream character. A couple of years ago, Hasbro gave us this disco version of Dazzler, which, it's pretty great, but it's not the Dazzler I know and love, and I kind of thought, well, this will have to do. So yeah, I'm really stoked that now I have this X-Men version of Dazzler. My only real complaint is that this really short hair is based on her look from the animated series, I think. Whereas the Dazzler I read in the 80s, she did still have shoulder-length hair. So this isn't really the look I associate with Dazzler. It's very close, but I wish she did have longer hair here. But yeah, as far as accessories goes, she comes with these kind of light effects that we've seen come with all kinds of characters, like Doctor Strange and everybody else. But it works perfectly for her to represent her powers of being able to, I don't know, what is it, generate light beams or something. Pretty much the same thing as Boom Boom and Jubilee. I'm sure some hardcore X-Men fan can tell me all the minute differences and how these powers are all unique. But as far as I can tell, they just shoot light at other hands. So why was she my favorite X-Men? I don't know. I think because she was introduced and she was brand new to me, she felt like a character I could kind of navigate the complicated X-Men continuity with. She wasn't some character that had been around for decades before I even started reading. And I liked her look, and I think she's cool. And I was very happy to get this figure. So yeah, if you are a Dazzler fan, by all means, seek this figure out, because it's pretty great. And the last figure I have to show you today, it's another Marvel Legend, but this one is not an X-Men. This is the Black Widow. And this figure is from, I don't know what they called it. I think maybe just Marvel Classics or something. But similar to Dazzler, these ones were sold on card backs similar to the 90s toys from Toy Biz. So they were kind of a retro style wave. And when these were first released, they were $30, just like every other Marvel Legend. But for whatever reason, my EB Games got in a whole wave of these figures, which included that yellow and brown Wolverine that I showed you earlier. So that figure, they had a classic Spider-Man, a classic Iron Man, and Black Widow here. And they were only $12, so less than half price. And so I thought, you know what, I'll pick this one up. I don't love this figure. Again, she's got that kind of really flat female body. It might be the exact same body as Boom Boom and Dazzler. It's very plain, no sculpted detail. The only way you can really tell it's Black Widow is because they added her wristbands and her belt. So, it's not too exciting. But also the head. This head is reused from the Mary Jane figure. And as we all know, Mary Jane is Spider-Man's girlfriend / wife. And she's a redhead as well. I could maybe tolerate the reuse of this head if this head came from a blonde character or a brunette character. But really the only difference between this head being used for the Black Widow is the lack of freckles that the figure had when she was sold as Mary Jane. So I can't not see Mary Jane when I look at this figure. It just does not look like Black Widow to me. So I almost passed on it completely. However, even though her outfit is kind of boring, that is the classic Black Widow outfit. And the only Black Widow I currently have in my Marvel Legends collection is this one here from Avengers Endgame. And even though it's a really nice figure, it looks, a lot like Scarlett Johansson, really nice likeness. It's really not a very good, iconic Black Widow. She doesn't have her red hair, and she doesn't even have her full black outfit. So for the fact that this was the only Black Widow I had, I thought, well, you know what, for $12, I should get this. I need a more comic accurate Black Widow. I wish it didn't look like Mary Jane, but for $12, not too bad. Who knows, maybe I could even take one of those jackets or something off of Boom Boom, and I could even display this as a Mary Jane figure, because I actually don't have that Mary Jane, so there you go. Maybe that's what I'll do. Anyway, not bad. So those are the new X-Men figures that I've gotten in the past couple of weeks. Hope you enjoyed the video, found my reviews helpful. And if you did like the video, please, like it below, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment. I'm always happy to get comments from people, and I answer every one. So thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.